One time for your mind. This week, we are going to talk about another album that turned 25 years old. We talked about Reasonable Doubt on the previous episode with our guy, Sky Zoo.
Yeah.
But another album that turned 25 just a week later after Reasonable Doubt was released is It Was Written. Second album, sophomore album from the legend Nas. An album that it's very interesting because I feel like when we have this discussion that we're going to have around It Was Written, Bryan and I, again, like because of our age gap, they're the way we receive things. Some of these things I'm talking about, I received it more in the time, but I was also young in the time. I was I was in my senior year of middle school at this time, this album being dropped, same as Reasonable Doubt, so it's a little bit different. Bryan kind of went back to this after. But what I do remember at the time, Bryan, about this album being dropped is a lot of people, I remember talking to my cousin about this so much because he's the one that got me into Nas and Illmatic. This was such a different sound from Illmatic, right? This was Nas's first like big commercial success off of Illmatic. You know, this was a commercial album with the Dre production and, you know, it just the more lush sounding production, if you will say. So it's a very different sound. It's also Nas embracing more of the mafioso rap, shall you say, than you did not really hear on Illmatic. So for some people, this was very jarring, and I think it's a very polarizing album in comparing the two, Illmatic and It Was Written. But this is still something that's regarded by many people, many Nas fans, as one of their favorite albums. There's even an argument out there, even though I think these people are wrong, that It Was Written is better than Illmatic. I absolutely do not think that it is not. I think that it's not better than Illmatic in any way. I do not think it's the masterpiece that Illmatic is. I think those people are tripping. But I recently listened to this album because I hadn't sat with it in a while. And I went through it. And I think it's a very good Nas album. I do not think it's a classic. I think it's a very good Nas album. A lot of people feel differently. Bryan's got his rankings. I know that we'll look through, but I do think it's an album that is absolutely good to revisit and listen to. I think on this album, Nas, you see maybe not the introspection lyrically that you saw on Illmatic, but Nas is still lyrically sharp. He's showing you a variety of styles and aggression. Obviously, one of the biggest hits of Nas's careers on this album, If I Ruled the World with Lauryn Hill. And for anybody who does not know, that song, when it dropped, it was everywhere that summer. Everybody in New York was playing it in their car. Just a huge record. But Bryan, enough of me. It's an album I like. It's not a Nas album I feel like I go back and listen to thoroughly enough. It is not a straight play for me. There are skips on this album for me. And there's actually a song, I think Nas has arguably one of the worst hooks ever on a Nas song. And that is, are you laughing because you know what song it is?
Nas is coming.
It's awful. That's awful. Awful. Just awful. Sorry, Nas, I love you, but Nas is coming. Which I actually like the production on that.
I love that beat. That's the thing. Like I kind of almost don't care.
But I hate that hook.
Can you go through the track list one by one?
Sure.
Let's do that now.
We can do this. Well,
I'll tell you where I had. Go ahead.
Okay. So the album starts off. People who've never listened to It Was Written. The album is a really good intro track, which Nas is sort of taken back to being a slave working in the fields, looking to get out. Which then transitions to a really dope song and one of the better songs to kick off an album. Not an intro in the message, which is really good. And then goes into I believe this was the first single off the album, if I'm not mistaken. Street Dreams was the first single off the album. And I think this song is very different sounding for Nas at that time. The video was also huge. Took a lot of scenes from Casino, the movie. Next on this is I Gave You Power. I think an iconic Nas song produced by DJ Premier, in which Nas raps. It's personification rap. Raps as being a gun. Very similar to Emily Dickinson's poem, My Life as a Loaded Gun, which I think Nas probably got some inspiration for. Fifth track on here, Watch Them. that's also a Dre beat on there on this album. So some Dre production. This is huge at the time because Dre had not worked with any East Coast artists. That's something that should be mentioned that people might miss at the time. Dr. Dre hadn't worked with any East Coast artists. Nas was sort of the first East Coast artist he worked with. 6, Taken in Blood. 7, Nas is Coming. We spoke about that. Really like that beat, just that hook. Ooh. 8, the Posse cut on this classic, Affirmative Action, with a stellar, I don't know how many bar verse from Foxy Brown. I think it's at least 32.
I was gonna say I think it's 36 or something like that. I counted this a long time ago. But yeah, let's go through the rest quickly.
9, The Setup. 10, Black Girl Lost, one of my favorite Nas songs. 11, Suspect. 12, Shootouts. 13, Live and Rap. 14, If I Rule the World. Obviously talked about that. Big record.
Yeah.
Arguably one of Nas's biggest records. So that's a track list. 14-track album. Pretty tight, just under an hour at 58 minutes and 29 seconds. So not a horribly long listen. What is your thoughts on this track list? Is there anything you would take away? Anything you would have added? Yeah, your thoughts, Bryan.
I wish Silent Murder was on it on the official
Good one.
version.
It's a good one.
Silent Murder.
What, would
he
you
just
have taken
recently-
anything out?
How many skips do you have on this album? Because I think we
4.
talked about you 4. What?
No. I was saying for me. For me.
I was gonna say
I was saying
4.
4. No, it's not 4.
I have like 1.
2. I have 2.
Yeah. I want to see if we have the same ones.
Well, you know what 1 is.
I look. I'm not skipping Nas is Coming because that beat is fire.
See,
But-
and I'll probably actually say, the more I think about it, I could leave that song because I do like the beat.
Is your other one Watch Them with Foxy Brown?
No, that doesn't bother me. I don't
Okay.
love that hook with Foxy,
Just
but that song's fine. That's a skip for you?
No, I was guessing.
Yeah,
I mind that song. It's not one of
I
my
think
favorites.
I would get, if I was gonna leave Nas Is Coming because I like the beat, I could get rid of the setup and shootouts. That could go for me. Not crazy. about the
Shootouts
song.
over Suspect. That's interesting.
Yeah, I like Suspect actually.
Suspect might be my other one, but it's regardless. Like, okay, so to me, in terms of the lore, to me, we're talking about the best discography in hip hop. And some people would say, Jay and Kanye. I don't know if Kanye is necessarily, hip hop with his last several albums. That's a different discussion. But so I think that this album, while I don't think it's, for me, I have it 6th in Nas's discography. But I still think there are a lot of rappers who some people will say are all-time greats that don't have an album better than this one, which is to say a lot.
Yeah,
And
I'd agree with that.
it sounds crazy when you say it's 6, but then as I go through the list, because I thought it would be higher, and I always think it's going to be higher, and then no, I
What do
like-
you have over it? Let me hear.
in this order, 1 through 5 would be Illmatic,
Uh-huh.
duh. And I don't think like you could even make the case it was written as better than Illmatic. Like I don't
It's
even
not.
think that's a discussion. You know what I mean? And I think it was written as really good, but Illmatic is legitimately like perfect in terms of hip hop albums. Life is Good, Stillmatic, and Godson, and The Lost Tapes was the 5th one.
Oh,
So-
I agree. I agree with all that.
So like you know what I mean? And
I agree with all that. I think all those albums are better. I agree.
Life is Good to me is Nas's number 2 project and the most underrated in his catalog. Some people like you have the Lost Tapes up there or Stillmatic, which I don't mind that. You know what I mean? I totally get that. For me, Life is Good.
Well,
Maybe because like that album, like it came out as I was leaving high school and entering college. So that was sort of seminal for me. It was around that time where Section 80 hit for me. And I told you Section 80 will always be my favorite Kendrick project because of how I sort of experienced it in real time. Life is Good was the same thing for me. But yeah, Illmatic 1, Life is Good 2, Stillmatic 3, Godson 4. And it was written 5, Lost Tapes after that. And then it was written. All great albums. And I think that's the top half of his catalog, not including Distant Relatives, which I could make a case could be above this too. But that's really to speak to not like how great or not great like It Was Written was. I think it's a great album. I just think that Nas also has like other works that are even better. Because when you're talking about on a rating scale, I'm still putting It Was Written at like an 8 or 8.5 out of 10.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
You know what I mean? Like
I
all the
think
other albums, though, like Illmatic is a 10, and the other albums that I mentioned, Life is Good, Stillmatic, Got Some, Lost Tapes, are like between 9.5, 9, maybe 8.5, the lowest.
I think my other thing where it was written is I think the first half of the album is better than the second half of the album. Like some of the better songs are in the first half of the album. There's some really good
Agree.
ones at the end. Black Girl Lost and obviously If I Rule the World, great song to close the album too. But I just think there are other Nas albums I go to where I think there's songs that mean more to me, or I think he actually has better songs on them that we've talked about, or just flow better. Again, this is not a knock when it was written. It's obviously it's a hugely influential album, especially for the time. The shift in that sound in '96 of where hip hop was changing. You know, we talk about Reasonable Doubt, that was very jazz heavy. This is a lot more modern production for that time. You know, you were getting away from those grimy, dusty, dirty drums in the early part of the '90s in New York. I mean, you see these in albums of these times, whether it's It Was Written, whether it's Fugees dropping later that summer, whether it's Big with Life After Death the following year. You're starting to see this more. I would say, like I said, not really lush. Lush might be the wrong word, but it's a more fleshed out sound, more instrumentation and sampling being added in,
Polished.
more polished. Yeah, you could
Yeah.
say hip hop was starting to turn into more of a polished sound than more of that gritty, grimy sound, which I still enjoy. You can enjoy both of them, but you can see where it was changing. And then also
Yeah.
the sort of beginning of the mafioso era, which was around a lot of hip hop from Big and Nas and also Jay. So that sort of rapping about their style and their life. And so you were starting to see that as well too. So there's no doubt this album is absolutely influential. Also,
Yeah.
like that Nas, one thing I should be noted about this album, Nas continues the sort of album cover theme that you see of his first album of his face superimposed in the background. So it was different from Illmatic, where he had his face as a kid, and now it was his face in his current state. And then he also continued that, I guess, on I Am with the Pharaoh theme going on there. But like, nah, man, no.
And he did it on Nostradamus also. Which look,
Oh, I forgot about that because
that but that cover is hard. It's just, it's just not it's not exactly an album that's high up there in the rankings. I also want to point this out in terms of
Yes.
like a couple of things about It Was Written. Now we've talked about King's Disease being album of the year last year, and I have that right below It Was Written
I
in
think that's
terms of
fair.
my Nas album rankings, in a tie with I Am, be- because you get there in different ways. I feel like they're both as good as one another, but you get there in very different ways. The thing with I Am, which actually followed up It Was Written, was that of all the Nas albums, save for obviously Illmatic, you could
Hmm.
argue, and probably Stillmatic, you could argue that I Am has the highest highs, because I think that you could argue there are 4 top 25 Nas songs on that album. The problem is you also have like Dr. Knockboot, Kissing. You know what I'm saying? Like you have 4 skips on that album for me, but you
Four
also have,
top 25 Nas songs on I Am.
yes,
Okay,
you could argue that. So
Nas
Nas
is
is like,
like
yes,
Undying Love.
Nas is like Undying Love.
Um,
You know the other one. I don't know if you'll get the fourth one, because the fourth one is probably more of my preference or whatever. One day I will make the top 25 Nas songs list, because I keep saying it. And this is the thing with King's Disease in comparison. King's Disease,
We Will Survive one of those?
We Will Survive is one of them, and the Hate Me Now will be the other one.
It's funny. Hate Me Now is such a big record. I remember
I don't know
it's
if I'd put it there, but I'm saying off the top of my head, like I
yeah,
would
that's fine.
argue
That's fine. I
those
think that's fair.
four,
That's fine.
Nas is like is absolutely, that's a top 10 probably Nas song, right?
Might be top five.
But yeah,
Might be.
Undying Love could be in the top 10,
Great song.
15, whatever.
Great song.
Right?
One of the best songs to close a hip hop album.
We Will
Fantastic.
Survive. I loved it. I thought We Will Survive should have actually come right before Undying Love on the track list. I think that would have been great and made a lot of sense. But like, yeah, and then Hate Me Now is such a big fucking record, and it was a record that was polarizing at the time, and still
It
for
was.
a lot of people, it's still a big record. You still hear it in arenas. People still
Oh
use it for
yeah.
video
Oh
packages
yeah.
and things like that. Like it's so. But the lows, I said, he also has a couple of his worst songs on there.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But I think that, and with King's Disease in comparison, I think that it's more just consistent straight through. I don't
Right.
think there's super high highs. I don't think there's really low lows. I think it's consistent the way through.
I
So
agree with that.
it's very good in its own regard. I just don't think I'm probably not putting anything in Nas's top 25, but that's a list that we actually got to compile at some point.
We
We could
gotta
probably
do
do
that
that
at
over
some
the
point.
summer. Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll do that.
I,
We'll have our top 25 lists and then our honorable mentions.
I don't disagree with anything you said. I do have it at the same place as you.